On June 26, 2019, the New York Times Magazine published a family portrait, Brothers, Sisters and Strangers. The piece consists of a photo essay of Eli Baden-Lasar, a student from Wesleyan University, with an accompanying text by Eli. Eli was conceived with the help of an anonymous sperm donor and raised by a lesbian couple. The photo essay is a short story of his attempts to connect with his 32 half-siblings. Eli was told that as a child that his father was a sperm donor. He was given a photocopy of a questionnaire that the man had completed. He used to carry it with him, taking it to school and studying it occasionally. It was a way to help him understand himself. At the age of 19, Eli accessed the sibling registry of the sperm bank that had been used to conceive him. And when he did so, he found that his biological father was also the biological father of 32 other children. Displaying remarkable persistence, Eli, a talented photographer, met and photographed all 32, visiting 16 states in the process. It turned out that one of them was even a classmate of his. Having a look at the various photos, there's quite a lot in the series, but if we start looking at a few of the different technical considerations, such as focus, each of these images involve a human, so they're all portraits, and the focus is very much on the human themselves, and everything else around them comes secondary. However, there's not like a huge amount of focus on them with other things being out of focus. So the depth of field is relatively shallow. Things that are in the background are pretty much like they're slightly out of focus, but very, very close to being focused as the forefront. So very low depth of field. In terms of noise, there's not a great deal of noise in the images. Sometimes by the tone, it can be a bit confusing to find out. There's a lot of grey tonalities in the photos. It's very difficult to sometimes distinguish this between noise. And sometimes, some of the fabric or the carpet that's used in some of the images look a little bit like noise, which can be a little bit confusing as to whether or not it's actually noise. But I'd say that the noise is relatively low. Most of the images are not sharp. And in terms of exposure, there's not a high level of exposure. In terms of any post-production editing, it does look like there has been a little bit of saturation on the images. Again, not a great deal. I think that the images contain a lot of originality, so there's not a lot of editing that has gone on, but perhaps a little bit of saturation, which you can see on the soles of the feet in this image, the hair colour in this image, as well as the difference between, say, the black dress and the arms. There's definitely some contrast there and some dynamic range. The tonal range is quite narrow again, where the lightest and the darkest parts of the image are very similar. A lot of the images are either all very dark or all of the same tone. Eli used a large format camera for the project, an intentionally retro and challenging device. Quote, "So much about the world was already being mediated by online databases and registries and social media, all of this technology," he said. And this type of camera just felt completely out of that world. Given the camera used, the aesthetic considerations of a lot of the images hold an old world feel. Most of the colour that used in the images are dull greys and browns, and where there is colour used, they're a very soft palette, a very washed out. There's no bold colours in any of the work. In terms of simplicity and complexity, some of the images are incredibly simple, where they just primarily focus on the human or the person in the room with very little around, for example, on a staircase or in front of a river. And then there are others which are a little bit more complex and have a little bit more involved clutter, rubbish in the house, or they might be in a garden. Some of the images are strangely sort of sexual in nature, I find. The positions of the way in which they lounge around, some of them, the fact that they're on beds, I find quite an interesting take. Some of the way the people are positioned on chairs with their legs open, laying over couch. This one particularly reminds me of sort of like a gay porn motif. So yeah, I just find some of that strange, considering that the topic is siblings. This woman lying on the floor, looking over her shoulders, very suggestive. So back to the complexity, simplicity. You know, sometimes like this one here with the two siblings, they're in a junkyard. And so it's quite cluttered and messy. Whereas the little boy here with the cross, it's very simple. It has been framed. The lighting here used is very effective. In terms of symmetry and asymmetry images, the author or the photographer himself, Eli, he's front and center on his mother's bed. And a lot of the images have the subject or the human or the person in the front and center. Sometimes there are two of the same, the sperm donor has donated a sperm on multiple occasions, which has eventuated in either twins or a brother and a sister. And these have tended to be fairly balanced when there's two people. Every now and then there's also an image where the person is cut off the side of the image, or that they are slightly to one side. But most of the time, the person is in the center of the image, similar to a typical portrait. In terms of the eye lines, when you look at each of the images, all of the people in them, maybe except for one image in the series, they are looking straight at the camera. So when you look at the image, your eyes are directly, generally straight to the person's eyes. It's a natural thing to do, to look at someone back in the eye. There's only very few images that have people looking away. And from there, sometimes you have eye lines which go towards, like this man on the couch. The couch sort of forms a direction towards his head, which makes you look that direction. Other people are standing up on a chair, which, drags the emphasis towards the person on the chair. Sometimes you're in a room where the angles of the wall sort of indicate a certain direction. With this man sitting on the floor, your eyes also shift to his feet because they're quite prominent in the foreground in terms of size compared to the rest of the image. Sometimes because of the room, like this one with the fish tank here, the fish tanks and the ceiling sort of go towards the subject matter. Same with this woman with the mirror and the moon. Again, because it's in the corner of the room, the shape of the room is drawing the eyes towards the center of the image. Yeah, there's a couple here there's been light that has been used, which indicate that there is a window. In this image, you can see the window, but in some of the other images, you can't see the window. In relation to the point of view, most of them are dead center directly in front of the subject. But then there are a couple where the point of view look down towards the subject, as if the photographer is standing and looking down, whilst some are lying on the floor. And others also indicate a point of view where the foreground, like I think I formerly mentioned the shoe, is very much the point of focus as well after looking at the man's eyes. Interestingly, the rule of thirds hasn't really been used in a lot of the images. I feel like the proportions are a little bit more like a rule of fifths, if anything. Some of them have a rough rule of thirds, but it could be cropped a little bit more to really accentuate the rule of thirds. Otherwise, they're like a little bit skew-if. The tonal value or the light quality tone in the images is more apparent or diverse in the images that have light or white and black in them. Otherwise, most of the tone between light and dark is very similar amongst a lot of the images. The narrative I find particularly difficult to follow because obviously we know that there's a biological link between these humans. And there seems to be a similarity in a lot of the images of socioeconomic status. It all seems very middle class. Some of the images appear to be more artistic than others, but that a lot of the siblings are also studying at the moment and are students, which also, I guess, gives off, a student vibe. There are some images that maybe look a little more affluent than others, but the narrative is very middle class. Yeah, I don't know, like it's hard to pick it really. Like there's such contrasting images in a way. I mean, there's so many similarities in, they look directly at the camera. There's the grey, brown tone colours and the such. But in terms of the story of how they're linked together, really, it's that some of them look similar and none of them are smiling. Like no one seems to be very happy. They're just staring and no one, I don't know. I guess people feel confused that, some of the people have indicated that it was exciting finding out they had some siblings, and then when there were more and more and more, it just became like, oh, how many are there going to be? And it made them feel like just one in a number, like a statistic, as opposed to, someone who's special. Visual communication, there is a strong message of alone, by myself, I'm the only one. Like I wonder if, apart from the siblings that have a brother and sister in the same family, I wonder if many of these other people have brothers and sisters, or they are simply just only children. But that's certainly felt in the way that they look at you and the way that they are there all by themselves. Some of them, the way in which the subjects look at you is quite untrusting, or I don't know, a bit elusive, or a bit fed up or pissed off. I'm not really getting a friendly vibe from many of the images. Some are friendlier than others, but some are a bit like, what do you want from me? Is the feeling I'm getting. There's a dissatisfaction in some of the images. Some of the people look like they've got a chip on their shoulder and others look a little bit more friendly. Some of the semiotics are very obvious in some of the pictures, particularly the image of the little boy with the crucifix in the background. There's a man with a portrait in the background. A lot of very messy houses or cluttered houses, which indicate to me a level of chaos, unkept gardens that look, I don't know, just a bit shabby, things that are broken, like the hoop the man is sitting on is, that has fallen over. That clearly, the fact he's sitting on there, I think goes to show that it's been there for a long time. There's some more structured or what appears to be manufactured images. The man lying on the floor with some unusual vases. It looks very unnatural. It feels like it's a posed and put together image. I don't think that those vases and whatever that thing is in the right hand side there naturally live there all the time. And then there's other images like this one in the junkyard that I think that stuff is there all the time, and that has not been necessarily placed together for the shot, that is just simply the messy backyard, unkept backyard of someone, and they are sitting in there. There are some images that indicate that they have been, I guess, planned, like this woman sitting in front of the mirror. It looks like that has been curated. Whereas there's some images, for example, the man with the fish tanks, I really don't think that he's, they were just sitting there. Are there any other semiotics here? Let's have a look. Yeah, I guess, we can see that there's some old pictures in the background in some of the images. And sometimes you can see different logos on products which will indicate a certain time period. The image with the car, I don't recognise what that is. I know some people are crazy about cars that we'll be able to say in a second, but it looks like it's an older model. It doesn't look like it's a recent car. So that also indicates to us a certain time. But yeah, they're the semiotics that I could pick up on. I touched on this before, but I really think that in terms of any controversy, is really the images that indicate some sort of sexual nature. I mean, this photographic essay is about brothers and sisters, and I know that these people don't know each other, but I don't know, some of the, this woman here with the tattoo and her bra showing and looking over her shoulder in this kind of sultry, I'm just going to lie here and look over my shoulder. I find that a little bit controversial, a little bit uncomfortable. I have siblings myself, and I certainly, even if I hadn't known them, would not want to kind of pose like that for a sibling. And equally the man on the couch, really the sight, the eyes go to him and his bottom, really, and then the junk on the table. And I don't know, it seems evocative, the position, and same with the one with the woman on the chair, sort of with her crutch out and the focus from the feet upwards. And this one, I don't know, it just kind of feels like it's, just inappropriate for a sibling. He's got his shirt off. He's sort of lying there he's a 1980s model that you'd see on some pornography, deck of cards. So I guess that's the controversy for me in the images. Others, like this woman in a sequin dress on a bed. Why? Why the bed? I feel like perhaps that there's some identity crises going on with a few of these kids, or people perhaps, because the scene in which has been built or otherwise is sometimes a little odd. I find this woman here in her, it looks like a formal dress or a wedding dress, in the middle of a bit of a dump of a back garden. A little strange. It looks like she's had her hair done nicely, but it's like the day after or something. I don't know. And then there's just some really cool, like chilled, artistic, looking kids that just seem to be, studying and, yeah. And then there's, the confused ones. And I don't know, there's just a whole bunch of different personalities here that, that's really my thoughts on that. I can't really see that there's any conflict. You could say that in some of the shots where there's two people in them, that there is maybe that sibling rivalry. Not necessarily conflict, I would say, but a story of two, there's definitely two there, which the man on the outside of this structure and the woman on the inside is a sense of separation, even though it's a fly screen between them. Why is he on the outside? Why is he not in with her? It's a bizarre setup. Some of the image positions are a little cliche, like I'm just going to lay back on my couch here. That's not a natural shot. A lot of them appear to be positioned. They're not natural shots. They have been specifically told to sit in a certain position, or they're not at all natural, standing on a chair, leaning over on a couch, leaning against a dummy. None of them are natural. Some of the ones sitting on the floor, hanging off the ladder, sitting on a staircase with your hands on your knees. Like all of these have been positioned. The way that the man holds his hand on over each hand in the fish tanks, it's crafted. The woman kneeling down in her socks, that's not a natural thing really to be doing. I feel like the two with the white bed, even the woman with her foot up, like that's not a natural way to sit with your leg like that. So they're all very specifically, there's only maybe one or two images in here that kind of just look natural, like, oh yeah, I'm just sitting here and I'm not really doing a pose. All of the others look posed, like a model shot or something like that. Yeah. Even the artist himself. And finally, the emotional responses that I feel when I see these images. I'm not too sure if it's just because it's also a gloomy day as I'm recording this, but the images are gloomy. There is a sadness, there is a depression, and I think that is to do with the colours mainly. Probably the the camera that's been used, the content of the images, largely a lot of them just being really messy. No one is smiling. Not that you need to smile to be happy, but no one sort of seems just, I don't know, content, like very few. There's one little smirk of the guy on the stairs. But, the emotional responses are, I don't know, it's a bit depressing somehow. I don't know why, but it's just a bit depressing for me. The emotional responses, some of them I feel damn right uncomfortable. But yeah, that is my critique.